A very warm welcome today to Conversations with Humanity to Piper Martin. Piper, how are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
I'm fantastic. And, well, when you live on a sailboat and you're bobbing up and down on the ocean every day and you can look outside and see dolphins and turtles, it's not a bad way to live, huh?
I don't think it would be. I do not think it would be. I thought so. As soon as I jumped on this call, I looked at the background. I was like, I don't know if that's his bedroom or kitchen or what, but yeah, no, that's awesome living on a boat. Wow.
I've actually turned my salon, as they call it on a boat, into a podcast studio. So I've got kind of stuff coming from everywhere behind me and lights and all this sort of stuff. So,
yeah.
And you know what? Fiberglass, I found out, is a very, very good material for soundproofing for a studio.
No way.
Yeah.
There you go. Now the boat's the perfect setting.
So I don't need to go to Bunnings or anywhere and buy all these, soundboards and all these other things. So
none of that. But you got it all around you. How perfect.
If you're out there and you want to start a podcast, people, just go and get a sailboat. And that's what I suggest.
Yes, jump on a boat.
Jump on a boat.
Perfect.
So let's tell everyone we're going to around 103 countries around the world today to our audience. So you're going to be a global sensation after this show, Piper.
Wow,
So
I'm feeling the pressure now.
So why don't you tell everybody whereabouts in the world you are? You know where I am. I'm on a sailboat.
Yep. Well, I'm based in Sydney, Australia.
Right.
I'm on the northern beaches.
Beautiful. So that's the
Yeah,
north
love
side.
it, yeah.
So when you say the northern beaches of Sydney, for someone
Yes.
that's living in the middle of Africa, how would you explain that to them?
Well, I don't even know how to explain it, really. It's so hard to explain. All I know is that there's beach and there's shops and that's it. But no, well, near me is a city, and that's where the airport is from. It's a gate to all over the world. So that's directly in the city towards the east.
Yeah.
And if you're there, you travel north towards northern beaches. So it's North Sydney, pretty much.
Right. So when I used to live in Sydney, which I did a long time ago, I used to kind of use the Harbour Bridge as the north and south determinator,
Yep.
right? So if you live on the north side, you go across the Harbour Bridge to the north side.
Yep.
And
Yes.
and south. So if you're out there listening today and you're going to come and visit beautiful Sydney after COVID-19 goes away, then
Yep.
the north side of the Harbour Bridge is where Piper is talking to us from today. Have you lived there all your life, Piper?
I have, yes. I was born and raised here.
Brilliant.
New South Wales, yes.
It's a wonderful part of the world. If you were listening to the show and you were telling somebody 3 fantastic reasons to come to Sydney, what would you say that they have to do when they come to Sydney?
They have to do, all right, you got to wear sunscreen.
Yes, that's a good one.
You've got to prepare for the food, so probably don't eat for about a week. There's chips, there's burgers, there's pizzas all over here on the northern beach, especially northern beaches. And just relax.
It's
Such a relaxing, it's beautiful scenery here. All you need to do is relax, bring a smile, bring your friends, bring your family, and that's it.
I'll tell you what, there's probably a lot of people listening today who are familiar with the TV show Home and Away. That was filmed on the northern beaches of Sydney,
Yes.
wasn't it? Is that right?
Yeah, that's it, in Palm Beach, yeah.
Okay, and I think I've watched one episode of that show. I think they have a burger place on. Do they have a burger shop or something on that show?
They have a cafe and a restaurant.
Cafe and a restaurant.
One episode. I'm not impressed.
Yeah. Well, I don't have
Wow.
TV, so I don't watch any of that rubbish. So.
I think you got the scenery all to yourself anyway. It doesn't matter.
There you go. There you go. Now, what I do with all of my guests is I give you the opportunity to dedicate your show to someone special in your life. So who would you like to dedicate your podcast show to today?
Wow, that's awesome. I would love to dedicate this show to my mum.
Your mum?
She's an absolute inspiration in my life, and I just love her so much. So she's always a massive support. She's my rock. So she was very, very excited for me to go on the show today. So I'd like to dedicate to her.
Brilliant. What's your mum's name?
Her name's Mary.
Mary. Okay, Mary, this is for you. Mary Martin. And
Yeah.
look, you two can probably sit down afterwards and watch this when we release it together. That'd be a nice thing, wouldn't it?
I can't wait. It's going to be so exciting. I'm not going to even tell that I dedicated it to her. She'll freak out.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool, actually. Okay,
Yeah.
so I won't say any more about that, and we'll just go ahead as normal. So that's a lovely dedication. Now, you and I are going to have a chat about all sorts of things today, and I'm going to just acknowledge you because you're actually the youngest person I've ever had on my shows out of 215 guests. So
Wow.
There you
That's
go.
awesome. I feel very privileged.
yeah, I'm privileged as well talking to you because you know what, I'm actually a bit embarrassed by it because I should have a lot more younger people on the show because it's not just oldies that have views and opinions about what's going on in the world, and we need to listen more to you guys. So I'm actually really encouraged to have a chat, because I was reading through your bio and you've got some very interesting views on a lot of things that are very topical around the world. So we're going to dig into some of that, and we're going to have a little conversation and see where it heads us. But why don't we start off? I'm really interested to know, first of all, how old are you? Let's get that out.
I'm 19.
You're
just turned 19 a month ago.
You're 19. Okay, so you know I'm 55 years old. So we've got a good generational gap here today, and we can find out what our opinions are based on our generation as well.
Yep.
So let's start off with a bit of inspiration. So what are some of the things that inspire you in the world today? If you were to put your kind of thoughts around certain things, are there things that jump out and inspire you?
Oh, absolutely. I've always been inspired by women. Always. I mean, they are, to me, they're the mother creatures of the earth. But besides that, I just find that there are so many incredible women in the world, especially in political landscapes. I don't think they're taken seriously enough. I mean, there is a large difference in how many men and women are in political landscapes, and I feel like we need to be taken more seriously in a lot of different landscapes in the world. But women empowerment, feminism, and feminist jurisprudence, a theory of law that's within feminism is all really inspiring to me. I love uplifting other girls and younger girls and empowering them, and I feel empowered by so many women, especially in my life. That's the main thing that keeps me really motivated every day.
So you graduated last year from high school, and what are you doing now?
I'm now at university.
Yep, right. And you're studying, what are you studying at uni?
I'm studying a double degree, a Bachelor of Law and a Bachelor of Philosophy.
Okay, philosophy and law. Okay, yes. We'll get into both of those. I love Boston Legal, is one of my favourite shows. And have you watched Boston Legal?
I haven't.
You haven't? Okay.
No.
You got to watch Boston Legal, okay?
I will.
It's one of those things from yesteryear, but it's a good one, and there's some very good legal acting in that. So check that out. You probably watch Suits or something, do you?
Yes, I watch Suits. I love Suits.
Okay.
Great film. Great series.
We can talk about Suits because I'm into Harvey Specter and all the rest of the gang there. So
yes,
we can have a good chat.
Markle is yes, definitely for sure.
Okay, let's go back to what you talked about, because you talked about some of those really important topics, and let's start off with women, because I have a view on that as well. I've spent most of my life working around the world in all sorts of different jobs and capacities, and I've had the absolute pleasure of actually having lady bosses in my different careers that I've had, and they really do bring something different to the table. What do you think is lacking in terms of how far away are we today from your perspective in terms of having real true equality between men and women across the world?
Well, I think it's rooted in tradition, and I think that women are always, they're subject to being quiet and peaceful, and they are always subjected to listen to men, and they're seen as these strong beings in the world. And they're seen as more superior to women. And I feel like in the context of work and employment, education, men do have, they have more opportunity in those spectrums. And I think that women aren't taken as seriously. And I think that's proven in many facts and statistics. And if you look around the world, I mean, there's over 1,000. There's over 1,000 men in the House of Representatives in the government, and there's only 88 women. So I just think the ratio, this is in Australia, and I think that the ratio that stems across the world, it's not just here in Australia.
Yeah. So I was reading in your bio that you're very inspired by big global issues, things that are going on around the world, and I guess one of them is this equality between men and women as a particular issue. Do you think there's been a lot of change in the last 9 or 10 years, or let's go back to 5 years in terms of what you might be able to remember in terms of seeing change? We've got women presidents and prime ministers now in certain countries. I'm from New Zealand, and we have a wonderful lady in charge of our country over there. Have you started to see a lot of change?
I mean, personally, there's been more conversation. I wouldn't go as far as say change, but I mean, in 2017 we founded the Me Too movement. I think it was founded in the United States, and it's now global. It's opened the conversation to how we can raise awareness for gender equality. And I think that just in establishing a conversation, there can be change. And I know that change will come in the future. I mean, as far as now, with Jacinta Ardern as Prime Minister, there's Jacinta Ardern and a few other women that are presidents in the world. And it's proven that in each country, the global cases for COVID-19 are lower in countries that are led by women. So I just think that I just find that so fascinating. I don't know. I just find that really fascinating. Yeah.
Is there any scientific data out there to back that up in terms of the fact is that because a woman is in charge that there are lower rates of the virus pandemic? Is there any scientific reason behind that?
Honestly, I don't know. I think that all it is, I think that women bring a completely different side to leadership. I think they bring a lot of different qualities that men do to leadership. Not saying that men aren't good leaders, because I think we have a good leader here in Australia, Scott Morrison. I think he's done very well, especially in response to the COVID-19, the pandemic. But I just think that women bring a lot to the table, and I think it should be taken seriously, because there's a large difference between how many men are in government and how many women. I think that's really interesting to me.
Have you travelled a lot around the world?
I haven't. I've been to 3 different countries. I've been to Fiji, and I also went to Indonesia, and I visited Bali with my family. And then recently, after I graduated year 12 in high school, I went to New York with my mum.
Oh, wonderful. The Big Apple, yeah. Great.
Yes,
what did you think of New York City?
Oh, wow. I have no words. I seriously sit back and reminisce and just cry. Listening to New York music, Frank Sinatra, yeah, I don't know. It's the most beautiful scenery I've ever seen. I love that city so much. I hope to go back. I hope to live there one day, maybe for a little while.
That's what I was just going to say is you probably told your mother on the way home that you were going to go and live there one day.
Yes, 100%. Yep, I hope to. I have a few opportunities to do to exchange there through uni, so I hope to maybe visit there for 3 months or 6 months or so. But it's just a beautiful city.
It is. So yeah, and there's a famous song out there that says that you should always try and live in New York at one stage of your life, because it teaches you so much about life itself. It's an incredibly vibrant city. It's also full of opportunity and hope, but it's also quite a sad city once you get there and you live. It's very different living in a city than it is just visiting, of course, and there's a lot of undertones and all the rest of it. So given that you've been to 3 countries, and I'm sure that's going to change over the course of your life as well, you're going to get to a lot more other places, but that kind of begs me to ask you the next question, which is around, where do you get most of your information from about what's going on in the world?
Well, for me, I do my own research. I visit a lot of journal articles and websites, and I also follow many women on social media that I have. I use social media to the best of my ability, because I know it's a platform and a privilege. So I follow a lot of women that inspire me personally, and they always collect amazing insights into different things, especially with the movement of women and Black Lives Matter and COVID-19 and all the other issues that we have going on around the world. So they always keep me updated as well. That's why I follow them. But otherwise, I do my own research, and I always ensure that websites are valid. And I don't know if you've heard of Daily Mail. Have you heard of Daily Mail?
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I've heard that their sources aren't as valid. I don't know. I always try and keep updated with everything.
Okay, so let's go back to Me Too, because I find that to be a fascinating movement in terms of what it's achieved and also who's involved with it. What do you think happened for men when the Me Too movement was launched? What do you think the impact was on men around the world?
To be honest, because I'm not a male, I don't have any personal perspectives, but I think I hope that men took it as a positive. I mean, we need them. We need all men as allies, and we need them to work with us along this movement, because we can't do it on our own. I mean, women are extremely strong, and we all know that, especially when we form together. But I think men need to be our allies. We need men to also stand up for us. I really hope that they took it positively, because it's a conversation that they can also input on. And yeah, I hope they did take it positively.
Maybe I'll ask the question in a different way around. How would you feel being a woman in today's society if all of a sudden overnight men started a Men Too movement, and all of a sudden you saw this humongous I guess, momentum around the world of men banding together to create whatever rights for men in different parts of the world. How would you feel as a woman in that kind of society?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. No one's ever asked me that question, but I think that men deserve the exact same rights. I mean, there shouldn't even be a conversation trying to distinguish men and women, because we're all the same. We're a part of the human race. So I do believe that they are 100% entitled to pursue their own movement, but I mean, they don't lack nearly as many rights as we do. I think that if they did carry on a movement, I'm not too sure what it'd be. I mean, there's a large gap between men and women in a lot of aspects of society. So I'm not too sure. I think it'd be, I don't know what to say about that one.
Okay. The reason I brought it up was that I know a lot of men, and I've had conversations with men across the world when the Me Too movement was probably at its peak, and there was a lot of conversation around, what role do men play in this, and are men actually invited to play in this? And it also started to make men feel quite vulnerable in the fact that a lot of women, and let's face it, a lot of the women that were involved in the initiation of Me Too were very strong, independent ladies who had a lot of power in terms of where they were based, and also their networks. And that felt quite vulnerable for a lot of men, because there's a lot of men in today's society who feel as though their voice doesn't get heard as well. There's a lot of men around the world that are in abusive relationships. There is a lot of men that feel underprivileged because of certain things that have gone on in their life, even in their workplace, as well as women. So I was kind of just looking at it from that perspective, is that, when we start to take sides on something, and it doesn't matter whether it's Black Lives Matter or whether it's Me Too or even cleaning up the environment, there always seems to be a them and the us mentality. Do you think that's the right way to go forward with trying to reconcile a lot of these differences we have in our society?
I mean, of course, with every movement, there's always going to be two sides, and it burns me, honestly, just right now. It makes me so, furious, because, I mean, the only reason that we have a Me Too movement is so that we don't have to say Me Too anymore. I mean, with Black Lives Matter, it's for everyone. It's not just for Black lives. Black people are, they're being suppressed and they're being willfully ignored. And the fact that we have a Black Lives Matter campaign is so that they can be equal with white lives. So I think that's the same with men and women. I mean, the Me Too movement isn't just for women, it's for everybody, because if women are equal, then we will all be a part of one beautiful world that's not always going to be happy. But I think that you're absolutely right. There always is going to be a them and a us, and I really wish that didn't have to happen, because at the end of the day, every movement that's going on around the world, Me Too as well, Black Lives Matter, it's for everybody. We all want to be same. We all want to be equal. We all want to be seen as equals in the world. Yeah.
So amongst your peers, when you talk about these things, is it at a level where it's very passionate and you want to, join these movements and get involved and be a voice of change? Is that the kind of level that you're talking about when you're talking to your friends about these sorts of things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all, I have many different friends from, multicultural friends, all from different parts of the world. And we are all a part of, wanting to, we all want to, I don't know how to explain it, but we all want to belong in we all want to be seen as the same category. I mean, all of my friends as well, they have the same opinion as I do, the same view. Yeah.
So how do you voice your opinion today? And is that mainly through social media? You get on and you support certain organisations or movements that you believe in, you make comments, you attend rallies or voice your opinion through those ways? How do you actually do it?
Yeah, social media, I think it's a great platform, especially with people with privilege. I think it's really important for myself to get on there, because I have followers of all ages. So if I try and educate them as much as I can, and educate myself through posting things on social media, I feel like messages can get out, and they can also do the same. They can take the information that I get from the people that I aspire to be like, then they can also educate their followers. And I think social media is a great way to do that, and it routes to all different places in the world and all different people.
Do you think social media is the end all and be all though when it comes to authenticity around some of those issues? Because as we've seen many times, right, and it doesn't matter whether we look on social media or we look on television news, whether it be cable news or mainstream news or reading a newspaper even, there's all sorts of different opinions going on about all these things that you've talked about already. So how do we cut through to the authenticity and the real stuff? How do you believe what you're reading?
That's right. Well, a lot of things on social media and the internet are fabricated, and we don't really know how to get around that. I feel like it's important for the media to narrate the truth for all of us, but I mean, in order to dive into the authenticity, I think that, following things and reading up on things that you truly believe in is the only way to be authentic. I always just, as I said earlier, I follow the people that make me feel like I'm happy on social media, because social media is a very tough place for a lot of people. So, I mean, if that's not the place for you, just don't be on there. Just, make yourself happy. But I think in terms of the information, credibility and validity of sources, it's so hard to get around because so many things are fabricated these days on social media. But I feel like that's a responsibility of media outlets. I don't know what we can do about that one.
Well, I find that really interesting because I'm someone that kind of goes across lots of different generations. I've worked with a lot of young people throughout my life and continue to do so today. And I'm really inspired with a lot of the innovations and solutions that young people come up with. And I'm waiting now for the next wave of young people to come through who are actually going to change the world's media for a positive stand, and looking at creating new platforms where authenticity of the press can be done in a new way, and a way which we can take hold or take back, I guess, what real journalism is all about. I think in terms of, we've got a lot of young people like you in the world who are focused on some of the big issues that are popular at the moment, let's call it that way, right? But when we look at the fundamental grassroots of some of the global issues, and I wanted to talk to you about those today because you've mentioned things like Black Lives Matters. I know that you're passionate about what's going on with COVID-19. You're passionate about what's going on with women in society across the world. All very, very important causes. I'm not downplaying any of those. But I wanted to throw a couple of things at you today and just see whether or not you're aware of some of this, because when we're talking about particularly those things, there's some other things that are really important. Do you know that every 1 to 5 seconds of every single day, that every 1 to 5 seconds, there's thousands of people under the age of 15 dying across the world?
In relation to
just death, all sorts of different reasons. So, for instance, last year, I'm going to give you a staggering statistic here. Last year, 6.8 million children under the age of 15 died last year across the world, and it was for reasons like sanitation, poor sanitation, disease, all the basic stuff, right? So there's a lot of big global issues out there. And here's another one for you. 35% of the world's entire population, we're talking about 2.5 billion people, right, do not have access to sanitation like you and I do today. Okay, so as a result of that, there's millions of people dying from all sorts of diseases as a result of that. Is that something that young people are even aware of, that we've got global issues like these that no one's really putting attention onto other than the organisations, the not-for-profits that are working in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many people, especially my age, that have no idea that any of this is going on. And this is an absolute great part of my passion. I research a lot about poverty and access to water, access to healthcare in the world for all people, especially from the age of infant to 20. I mean, there are a lot of children out there that can't have access to education, everything like that. So I think that willful ignorance is an absolute killer in society, and there's a lot of people, especially in my generation, that don't research, don't educate themselves, and that's why there is poverty in the world today, even though it's 2020, is because people willfully ignore it. And I think that we are capable of changing this, and if people start to educate themselves, I think that we could probably get there, hopefully one day.
I've done a lot of I used to run my own international charity organisation. I've done a lot of work in Indo-China and across the lower Asian countries, and I've seen some pretty horrific things. And, you and I today are sitting in Australia, which is a very developed nation, and, there's not a lot to be sorry for here in this country. What What's some of the hardest challenges you've had to face in your life so far as a 19-year-old? What would you put down to some of the hardships that you've gone through?
Well, it's such a good question because they're nowhere near as comparable to what other people go through in the world. I mean, I have had access to water, access to education. I'm now in university straight after high school. I had no problems there. I mean, I don't suffer oppression, and I think that it's such a great question, and it's such a good thing to reflect upon. At least I think people my age do that all the time because we take things for granted here, especially here in Australia where we're developed and where we have free healthcare. Yeah, I think that's a great question. I haven't had to suffer oppression. I mean, I've gone through a lot of lows in my life, like a lot of human beings have, but nothing comparable to what other people have been through out there. Yeah.
Yeah, and don't take my questioning as being a personal attack on you, because it's not. You're a representative for a generation today on my show, and I really respect that, and I want to hear, I guess, your views in reflection to the conversations that you have with your friends and your peers and also your family members, because you've got another generation that you live with as well, and they've got their views and opinions on things as well. There's lots of organisations that offer experiences, whether they be NGO organisation or also educational organisations, for young people to go overseas and do all sorts of incredible work. Is that something that interests you?
Yeah, of course. That always interests me. I mean, in high school, in personal development, health and education, we looked at NGOs a lot of the time. I think they're so incredibly important for people to jump on board. I mean, we can all do it. We can all dedicate our time to do so. So that really intrigues me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And with what you're doing at university, what's the end game in terms of where you want to end up with a career? What sort of things do you want to be doing across the world?
I'm hoping to get into human rights law after this. I really want to be a lawyer or a barrister. One of my main end goals at the end of this is to find justice for so many people out there in the world. It's not just women or people of colour. It's absolutely everyone, people who don't have access to healthcare overseas, stuff like that. I really hope to get into that and just fight for what's right.
Okay. What are your thoughts around what is happening in Australia in your own backyard at the moment with these detention centres for refugees that have been stuck in some of these places for up to 7 or 8 years, and offshore detention centres, which I haven't been there, so I cannot give you my own first-hand experience of what it's like on the ground, and like many people, I've read and I've seen documentaries that have been made. What are your feelings around what's happening there under the borders of your own country at the moment?
I think it's absolutely horrible. I mean, people who migrate here they come from countries that are most likely developing countries, third world countries, who have a right to education and to work and to health and to safety, and that's why they come here for. They come here on a lifeline, and I think that us imprisoning them in detention center is just not the way to go at all. We have so much space for people who want to live here, and I think that that's also resonating with what's happening in the US. I mean, the president there is he's honestly locking up humans and children that are of a Latino background, Hispanic, in cages, and I just think it's absolutely inhumane and it's cruel, and I'm honestly ashamed because I feel like that is not what Australia is about at all.
So when you see something like that and it's happening in your own backyard, and I think that's another important thing to remember, is that we can always point our fingers at other countries around the world and they're not doing the right thing and so forth and so on, but I guess, what's the saying? Charity begins at home, right? That's what
That's right.
the famous saying is all about. And here we are, we're in Australia, which is a huge continent with only 25 million people here. We've got all the space and land and everything. Do you think that these people should be, first of all, let in? And do you think there should be some kind of filtering system in terms of who's actually allowed to come here?
I mean, I think all refugees have a right to come here. I mean, if there's always a security check of non-violent backgrounds, and when that's ticked off and everything's okay, there's A-OK there with the authorities, and they should absolutely be allowed in. I mean, as I said earlier, they come from countries with a lot of violence and poverty, etc. I think that they absolutely have a right to come here. I mean, even when I was 10 years old, I wrote to Kevin Rudd when there was a refugee issue. I'm not too sure what year it was. I think it was 2009 or 2010 or 11. And I wrote to him saying, please let the refugees in. I didn't even know what I was talking about, but I knew that there was something that I was passionate about. And I think, just as a child, seeing what was going on in my own, as you said, in my own backyard, it's basic human rights. Everyone deserves a place in the world, and everyone deserves healthcare and health and everything. Yeah.
Is this topic something that you also talk to your friends about in your peer group in terms of, what's happening in places like these detention centres in Australia?
Yeah, it is. We always every now and then talk about the rights of humans, and every conversation pops up: immigration, migration, and all rights of all humans, women, etc. Yeah, it's absolutely a topic that we always discuss.
What are your views when it comes to, I guess, equality and liberalism across the country? Australia is a very lucky country. It's a very wealthy country in terms of, gross domestic product until this year. And but that's a global phenomenon that's happening, of course. But, everybody in Australia does pretty well. There's a few in particular that have, been highlighted across the years, and I talk about the Indigenous communities in Australia. What are your thoughts around equality within Australia? And, you've only got to go to the other side of the Harbour Bridge in your city there, and you'll see a lot of homeless people sleeping on the streets at night. What do you think should be done about things like that?
I think that we have, as we were saying before, we have the space and the infrastructure to open up homes for people who don't have enough money and don't have enough equipment to live. I mean, as you said, we can go into the city and there's someone that is homeless on every corner of every building. And I think that there are people walking by, millions of people walking by every day. And I think that there hasn't been enough change in that regard. I think that we have the infrastructure to do something about it and open up homes. There are women's suffrage homes here, which is really amazing. I think that we can do the same for homeless people. I think that they've had issues in their home, whether it be domestic or financial or social, and I think that we as humans owe them a second chance and a chance to live just like we are happy.
Have you ever gone and had a conversation with one of those people that are homeless on the streets?
I haven't. I saw there was a boy. He was 19, and I remember after school in primary school, when I think I was in year 4, his name was Ryan, and he was always at the shops every afternoon. He was at that age. He was 14. And I always remember seeing him every day after school. He was in his school uniform as well. He went to the school down the road, and a couple of years later, I was walking in the city with my sister, and he was there, homeless, on the floor, on a corner of one of the buildings, just like every other day where someone else is sitting. And I asked him what had happened and how we got there, and all it was, there was domestic issues at home. There are kids out there. He was only 19 on the streets. I just think it's unfair. Yeah.
Australia, unfortunately, is a country that has one of the highest rates of domestic violence in the world today, and that's a sad thing. And with COVID-19 and all the restrictions and lockdown we're putting, I saw yesterday something in the press to say that 680 police calls were put out for domestic violence alone in Melbourne and Sydney yesterday. What are your views around that?
Honestly, it's all such a tough time with COVID. I mean, people sit back and they complain about having restrictions because they can't go to the shops and get their favourite meal every day. But there are people out there that are stuck with their husband or their wife. It's both ways, and they're suffering domestic violence. And I think that the government are absolutely capable of acting on that. Luckily, we have great domestic violence services here, and police are always issued to the call, which is great. But yeah, I think absolutely more help can go into that.
Yeah, 21 women have lost their life this year alone in Australia due to domestic violence that got out of hand, and they ended up, and that's children that have lost their mother for the rest of their life, and also their father, because even the perpetrator, and I want to thank you for what you said, because you said it's both sides of the coin. It's men and women that are in abusive situations. Let's play a little bit of a game. I'm going to give you the power of being the Australian Prime Minister for a day, or for at least an hour anyway. So,
Okay.
because let's talk about what you would do in the case of some of these situations we're confronted with. You said earlier in the show that you respected the efforts that Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister of Australia, has been doing around COVID-19. Would you have done anything different than what he's been doing?
Um, I don't think I would, honestly. I mean, I think he reacted to what happened with COVID and how the cases were increasing pretty rapidly. I mean, it's a large call to put the whole country in a national emergency, and I think that he did that just within the scope of a couple of days after our cases started to increase, and then after that we saw the cases drop. I mean, we have restrictions that have eased massively here in Australia. There are kids going to school now. That it wasn't like that a couple of weeks ago. So I think that he responded to that really quickly, and that was really important to all of us here, especially when we're looking at other countries who are suffering massively with how many cases they have and how many deaths they have each day.
Yeah.
So I think that in that regard, I think he did a really great job there.
Okay, good. So what about when it comes to the Indigenous situation in Australia? This is something that's been going on for many, many years. It's been something that there's been a lot of money being spent on to try and give the Indigenous community of Australia a leg up, or a foot up as they call it, and helping them to not only integrate into society but to also prosper in Australian society. If you were the Prime Minister for a day, what decisions would you make to change anything that's going on with the Indigenous community in Australia?
I think the access that they've been given to education is absolutely amazing. I think that's really, really important. I think that we're still seeing a celebration, which is really, really sad, of how many Indigenous Australians are being incarcerated each year. I mean, the population here, the ratio, there are more white Australians here to Indigenous Australians, and their incarceration, I can't remember what the statistic was, but their incarceration rates are lower than ours, but there are less Indigenous people here in Australia, and if you put that together, there are more Indigenous. It's really hard to explain now.
There's more Indigenous incarcerated in Australia than the white people. Yes. Basically, that's what we're saying, right?
Yeah. Even though the white population it's hard to explain. If you look at the ratio, that's how it works
per
out.
head of population. Did you have Indigenous members in your community at school, and when you went to school?
Yes, we did.
Yeah. Okay. And as far as equality goes and treatment goes in school, were they treated exactly the same way?
Yes, they were, and I think that was really important when I became school captain in Year 12. And I always praised everyone of each year to always treat each other the same. My little brothers have friends that are Indigenous as well, and I knew people that were Indigenous in my school as well. They were always treated equally, and the teachers treated them equally, just as they deserve, really. It's great to see.
Because it's such a big issue in this country and it is your homeland, have you got any desire, have you ever talked about it with your friends, to go to the outback and see the Indigenous communities in their own communities and learn more about their plight and some of the things that they're asking and fighting for?
Yes, absolutely. I was actually talking to my friend about this the other day. 100%. That's a massive goal. I think that I think how the Indigenous people are living is ignored by a lot of people here in Australia, because they're not. There isn't a large population of Indigenous people here in Northern Beaches where we live. But if you go towards the Western Australia and other places around Australia, they're living differently, and I'm really intrigued to how they're living, and I want to learn more about their culture, because they are the first settlers. This is their land here, and I want to learn more about them, because I don't think it is taught enough in school. Yeah. And that's another thing that intrigues me, is that we learn about history around the world, but we don't learn about our own history. A lot of kids don't know anything about their fellow Indigenous people here, and I think that it should be implemented more in education. I want to learn more about it myself. Yeah, that's a great point. So let's talk about that in terms of your high school years. What else did you feel was lacking from an education systems point of view that didn't give you the things that you really wanted to learn about, real life issues at school? Yeah. Well, I was actually every time you ask me a question, I was speaking about this 2 days ago. I was speaking to my mum about this.
I must have been listening in, was I?
I think you must have been. There must have been a microphone somewhere. I was talking to her about how there is a lot of there is sex education which is taught in school, which is great. It's fundamental, it's mandatory in physical health, which is really important. But us as women personally, we aren't taught about pregnancy. You know, we don't know what's going to happen when we get older, and that's why it's proven that there are a lot of maternal health issues to the baby due to stress, because a lot of mothers don't know what's going on while their babies are inside. And I think that maternal care should be taught more in school. Personally, that's just a little side note. But apart from that, I think that the education system is really, really great here in Australia. I loved school so much. I loved all the subjects that we were learning. So, yeah.
Do you think it prepares you adequately, though, to go out into the big wide world to fend for yourself? You know, there's a lot of talk around, and I'm coming from a place of naivety because I don't have my own children that have been through that process. So I'm only basing my comments now on looking and observing at friends who have got children and been through that process. Do you think, though, that school really gives you the adequate education on life skills and the things that you need to, I guess, develop and evolve? You know, you've mentioned one now about sex education, but what about, you know, fundamental things about getting out there and being able to cook and clean and look after yourself and open a bank account and how credit works and how to get a mortgage and all those sorts of things?
Yeah, well, that's a great point. I think that all those, you know, everything mandatory, as what you just mentioned, is what we learn on our own. It isn't taught in school, and that's a fact. You know, we don't learn about mortgages in school. But other than that, I think it's a learning process, and we go through ups and downs. And I think that's how we gain the confidence to fend for ourselves and learn on our own. Yeah.
Okay. I've talked to a lot of adults over the recent weeks about how the global pandemic of COVID-19 has affected their lives, whether it be personally or through business. So now I'm really interested to hear from a 19-year-old how the global pandemic. Let's go back to the beginning of the pandemic and when the news started, you know, getting out across the world that there was a real problem here and there's going to be a lockdown in Australia. How did you feel about it? What was the emotional feeling at that time?
Oh, honestly, I think a lot of us were confused, especially as young ones. We feel distant to what is happening at the moment because we're far from the last pandemic. I mean, I've never been through this before, so I think a lot of us were confused. There was a lot of stress and panic going on in the world, especially in regards to education. I mean, I'm learning university online now. I haven't been into uni for 3 months now, so there was it's a bit different. But I think at the start, I think my friends personally, we all handled it well. We were there for each other, we were supporting each other. We faced our lows during the time because it was quite tough, but just once again, we always compare ourselves to others in the world and those who are suffering, and we can't take anything for granted. I mean, there are other people in the world that are suffering far more than us, so we just take it on board. We do what we're supposed to do and just follow orders, really. Follow orders.
I just
how did you feel? I want to ask you, because were you on the boat when that happened?
Yeah, I just want to go back to something you said, though, because I want to put it on the record that I wasn't around in the 1918 Spanish flu either, so I have no history with understanding how global pandemics go either,
yeah? Oh, right, sorry. Sorry. I know you're not that old.
I'm not that old, no. But, okay, so life on the boat, that's a good question. How has COVID-19 impacted me? Well, to be honest, it hasn't at all. Not one thing. What has happened is it's affected all of my friends, right? So every time I'm interacting with people, and I've got a friendship that goes across the world, more so than Australia, because I'm not from Australia, but nothing's changed because I'm always talking to them on Skype or Zoom or whatever anyway. And that just became more intensified because they had more time at home now because they've been locked down in their countries. But from a practical day-to-day point of view, I'm fortunate to live in a self-sustainable environment. So I'm off-grid. I don't rely on anything to do with anything other than Mother Nature. As long as the sun's shining and it's raining every now and again for me to collect rainwater, then I'm able to And you know what? The other good news is that I've actually talked to Woolworths supermarket, and for people listening around the world, Woolworths is a supermarket brand here in Australia. They actually make deliveries to my boat now, so I don't even have to. I don't even
No
have.
way.
I don't even
my
have
gosh.
to get off the boat. Yeah. So
You
no,
got your own Uber Eats.
I've been very fortunate because I've been zero impact as far as COVID-19 goes, but. And that's caused a problem psychologically because I haven't been able to be as empathetic as a lot of other people have had to be, because I haven't been in the situation where the lockdown has affected me, where I can't go to work, or I have to stay home with 4 screaming kids and a dog and all the rest of it, right? So I really understand that for a lot of people it's been very, very difficult, and it affects everybody differently. You're someone obviously who's very positive, very upbeat. You're of the younger generation, so I guess that, you know, communicating online to your friends and that has been something you do every day anyway. So I don't think that the technology side of it has been any different for you probably. But hanging out and going to places, has there been a sense of naivety though amongst some of the younger people about, oh, this is not going to hurt us, so we'll just go out and party anyway?
Absolutely. Yes. No one in none of my friends have been like that, but we've seen it. There was a small outbreak a couple of months ago with a party that happened in the city, and I think people are absolutely ignoring the severity of this issue. And it's got to do with the masks as well. I mean, there are so many people that don't want to wear masks because they believe that it restricts them from their own human right or their own liberty and freedom. But I mean, the government are just trying to protect them with health care, and we're fortunate that we actually have access to masks. But besides the point, yes, there has been a lot of people that have ignored it, and that's a major issue. Yeah.
So I guess in terms of, you know, we've been talking today about a lot of these big global issues that have been going on, and we've also talked now about some of the things that are going on in Australia. Do you think before you get out there and you finish your university and decide to take on some of the big issues of the world, do you think there's enough issues in your own backyard that you can also focus on to make a difference in your own country first?
Yeah, absolutely. I hope so. I think that all the things that we discussed that's happening in Australia, I mean, with Indigenous rights and women, as you said, we suffer domestic violence massively here as a lot of other countries. I think that in order for me and other people who want to make a difference, if they want to make a difference in the world, I think they need to look behind them and look in front of them in their own backyard before they can do anything.
Yeah, good advice. Now, you spoke earlier about some women around the world that actually inspire you, but you didn't give us any names. So why don't we go through a list now of some of the women that inspire you in the world today?
Yes, well, the list is endless. Honestly, it just goes on. But I admire so many incredible women out there. Who doesn't admire Michelle Obama and the Oprah Winfrey? But there are also so many people and women out there in the world that use their platforms for something good. I mean, that's why they inspire me so much, because they have this privilege. They don't have to do anything if they don't want to. They don't have to try and make a change or try to educate other people because they're very privileged, but they decide to because they want to make a difference. And people like, there's actresses like Sophia Bush and Nina Dobrev. I'm not sure if you know of them or heard of them, but they're incredible. They use their platforms just like I hope to. I know I'm not going to become an actress, but I mean, I think it's important. We all have social media. We're all equal on that level. So, and Meryl Streep, Meghan Markle, Emma Watson, so many people. It just goes on.
I knew we'd get back to Suits sooner or later.
Yes,
you've mentioned Meghan Markle, but before we go to her, Michelle Obama, if you met Michelle Obama, what was one question you would ask her?
Oh my gosh, that's a question I hate being asked because I have no idea what I'd probably just cry and just kneel. No, honestly, I'd just ask her if she had any advice, what would she give? Because I love learning as much as I love educating some other people, but I think that in order to educate others, you need to be educated. So if I could take any advice from her, that would just be amazing.
Okay, cool. Now, a lot of these ladies' names that you've mentioned, and I've got to say too, I want to ask you, are there any men out there that inspire you?
Yeah, there are a lot of men out there inspiring. I mean, Michelle's husband, Barack Obama, he's a major inspiration. Of course, leaders out there.
He's been on my show. Have you
No
listened?
way.
Have you listened to my podcast with him?
No?
Oh, you better do that. I'll send you the link after the show, and you
Oh my
can
gosh.
have a listen to it. So
That's incredible.
I'm interested to know, you've named these ladies, and I was going through the men. So Barack Obama. Who else? Who else have you got there?
Oh, if I had to list,
Besides your father, of course, you got to throw his name out there.
yes,
as well.
of course, my dad, Brett.
Yeah.
Dad, shout out to you.
Yeah.
If he's listening, I hope he'll listen to this. Yeah, no, Barack Obama. I don't even know. There's so many because I have been following the movement of women for so long. I have so many women that I hope to be like. I mean, there are a lot of great other great men out there in the world, but I've always aspired and I'm just obsessed with the women out there in the world as well. I don't know. It's a hard question to answer because I don't want to downplay men or anything like that, but there are just so many female leaders that I hope to be like. Yes.
One of the things that I'd like to share with you is I've met quite a few famous people in my time, and one of the things that always strikes me is you have an impression, an expectation of what they're like through the media that you've seen and everything before you actually meet them. And a lot of the time they're very, very different in real life to what they are promoted as being or marketed as being. Do you think that might be the case with some of the women's names that you've just thrown out there? Do you think if you actually did meet them in real life, they might be a little bit different than what you see in the newspapers and magazines and social media?
I mean, possibly. Anything's possible. I think that a lot of people are perceived differently on social media, and that's another thing that they do, as well as fabricating information. But I follow the women that I follow are always so vulnerable on their social media, and I feel they do that on purpose in the best way possible because they want to connect to the people who are following them, because they know that they have younger girls and younger boys out there who aspire to be like them or aspire to help other people just like they do. So I think that there's a big chance that they could be different, but I know how vulnerable they feel with their followers, and I think that's really important. So I think that they're the same as what I see on my screen anyway.
Okay, fair enough. I was just thinking recently of the drama or saga around Ellen DeGeneres and what happened with her, with people on her show saying that things are different behind the scenes. So I always looked at her as somebody that was pretty genuine in terms of authentic and true. We don't know the true story behind that, so I'm not speculating that she's all to blame on this or anything like that. I'm just saying that sometimes we can't judge the book by the cover, right?
That's right. Yeah, no, I agree with that slogan 100%.
Talking of books, what's your favourite book you've ever read so far?
My favourite book?
Yeah.
I've read a few, but I actually just read Becoming Michelle Obama.
Oh, okay.
Book. Yeah.
Okay.
But when I was younger, I read the book Boy Overboard, and it's an amazing book. Have you read it?
No, I haven't. Who wrote that?
Boy
Overboard. No, I've heard of it, but I haven't read it.
Yeah, we read it in school, and then I also read it again at home. I bought my own copy, but
okay.
It's about refugees and a family who migrated to Christmas Island.
Oh, okay.
And they went through hardships and a lot of things that is really prevalent today, especially with the refugees here in Australia.
Okay, well, that's a good shout out for everybody listening today. Boy Overboard is the book recommendation from Piper today.
And Becoming Michelle Obama.
And Becoming Michelle Obama as well. Now I understand where you got the Obama slogan from, so that's all. Yep. That's all good.
That's right.
I'm not going to let you go today until we've had a good chat about Suits and Meghan Markle, because there's somebody else that's been a lot in the media for all sorts of reasons, and she has created a persona around her, I guess you could say, in terms of her acting career, and now the wife of Prince Harry. And I see yesterday they've just announced they're going to do their own Netflix series. Is that right? Yeah? Are you up to speed on that?
Yes, I saw that.
I was hoping that Suits was going to come back and they were going to put Prince Harry in that somehow.
I know, imagine that. Oh gosh, that'd be awesome.
So I got addicted to Suits. I've got to say, like, I'm not a TV guy, but as soon as I watched the first episode or two of Suits, I was hooked on that thing. That was a brilliant show, yeah?
Me too. It's such an amazing series. Did you know it's not? I thought because it's based in New York City, but it's actually filmed in Canada.
Yeah, it's filmed in Toronto, yeah. And
Yes.
in fact, I'll give you a little bit of a tidbit here, yeah. I've been into the building where they've actually filmed it.
No way.
Yeah.
You have been into. Oh my god, Pearson Spectre.
But of course it's all a set anyway in terms of But I've been into the actual building that they used where they filmed it.
What did you think of it?
Yeah, well, it was a building, so it wasn't that exciting, and none of them were around at the time, of course. So I didn't get to meet anybody. But who's your favourite on the show?
Oh yeah, Meghan Markle, Rachel.
Oh, Rachel is, yeah. Rachel Zan.
And Jessica Pearson, she's amazing.
I used to like Rachel's dad. I thought he was a cool dude.
Yeah, he was cool. Yeah, he was a tough one to crack, but he got there in the end. Didn't he? He ended up working with. Who did he end up working with in the end?
Well, he came into the firm, didn't he, at the end?
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, I haven't watched it in a little while, but I thought so. Yeah.
He became a senior partner in the whole game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, that's it. Yeah.
And what else happened? Jessica, she left and started her own show, didn't she? Did she go to?
Yeah,
did she go to her own show?
Yep. Yeah, it's called Pearson's USA.
Oh, okay. Do you watch that?
Yeah. I watched the first couple of episodes.
Yeah.
And then uni started back again, so I haven't really been able to watch it properly, but that's something that's on my list. It looks really, really, really good.
Okay. So tell me, what else do 19-year-olds, what's the hottest thing that you guys are watching on Netflix and that these days?
Oh my gosh, so many shows. Well, when I get the chance to, at the moment I'm actually watching Glee.
Glee, okay.
Yeah.
That's the singing and dancing one, is it?
Yeah, it's such a beautiful show. It's so amazing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's heaps of other shows. Riverdale is something that's really, really popular.
Riverdale.
Across my age. Riverdale.
Oh, Riverdale. Riverdale.
Yeah.
Isn't that something from way back? I'm probably quoting some other show, but
it was based off comics.
Oh, comics, was it? Okay.
Yeah, you may have heard it. It was based on the Archie comics.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're into that? Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yep. Yeah.
What attracts you to these things? Like, is it just the whole fantasy of the whole thing? Is it just the storyline, or what's the grab for you guys to get into this?
I think for heaps of other people, because other people are watching it, then I want to jump on board and see what it's all about. I think it's just all about influence, and it's all over social media as well. So it's a major attraction for a lot of people. But yeah, like a while ago, I started watching a show called The Vampire Diaries, and I absolutely love it. And I only knew that, like, another friend of mine, Liv, she was the one that introduced me to it, and no one really watched it that we know, and now it's absolutely everywhere.
Okay.
So I think it just TV shows spread like wildfire.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the longest period of time you've ever been off social media? Are we talking hours or days here? Like, do you spend days off social media?
I haven't in a very, very long time.
No.
Because it's it's where I do, like, it's where all the women that I love, they're all on my phone. It sucks that they're all on my phone, but I think 2 days, mate. I think 2 days.
2 days the longest you've been off social media, yeah?
I think so.
How do you feel about that? Do you get kind of withdrawal symptoms if you haven't got your phone with you all the time?
No, I'm not like that. I mean, I only love my phone because, like, I can call my family or my friends, and social media in that aspect of where I people that are empowering on there. But honestly, it actually makes me really sad that I've only had 2 days, because I think it's so important for people and for mental health to take a break off their phone and to live and to go outside and to play around. And I think that's what I want to learn. I want to do more of that, especially with university. I'm on the laptop, then I go on my phone onto social media. I just don't think it's healthy, really.
I had 11 years without a mobile phone.
11 years, wow.
Yeah, and I've only just got back into it because of podcasting. Actually, that's the only reason I started having a phone again, and I'm really, really angry at myself because of that.
Yeah. But did you feel a difference when you didn't have a phone? How did you feel?
Well, yeah, but it's extraordinary because, first of all, I've got to tell you this, and I was living in Singapore at the time when I first made this decision. And the thing is, there's so many things in your life that are connected to your phone. Like, you can't open a bank account without having a phone number. So
I know.
you've got to give the phone number to the bank, right? And
Yep.
and it's a form of identification as your phone number. So I couldn't
Yep.
open a bank account without a mobile phone number. So
Mhm.
thankfully I made up a number and they didn't check it out, and I still got my bank account open, right? So I was lucky in that respect. But I loved it. But what I didn't like about it was because I was the only person I knew in my world, that didn't have a phone, everybody else did. So what I was trying to achieve, which was to have conversations like you and I are having now, and to stop the distractions that when I went out to a restaurant with my friends at dinner time, they weren't on their phone taking photos of their food or texting somebody else somewhere else. It didn't work for me because they were still doing it because they still had their phones.
Yeah.
And it made it actually worse for me because I was sitting there without my phone.
Without your phone, yeah.
Wanting to have this connection and interaction, which was the whole reason I gave away my phone in the first place, or got rid of it. So it was a two-sided sword, I guess, in terms of I didn't achieve what I wanted to achieve with my network. But for the times that when I was alone and I didn't have it, I loved it. It was fantastic. It took so much stress out of my life. I wasn't checking this device all the time. I wasn't getting messages that were ridiculously unrewarding. So I always said to people, if you want to get hold of me, you can. I've got an email address. You can send me an email. So my traffic of communication decreased a lot, but the quality of my communication increased a lot because the people that I really needed to hear from, they got in contact with me and we had good conversations, and all that other rubbish, that thing I call white noise, that went away. That was really, really good.
That's right. Good. I think it's really important for people to take a break.
But before you go for 11 years, Piper, before you go for 11 years without a phone, I would try 11. I would try 11 days first, and just.
I think 11 days.
Slowly.
I think so too. I think some people out there need to try 11 minutes first before 11 days too.
Maybe you could do something within your friends group and just say, look, this weekend we're not going to use our phones. We're just going to talk and chat and hang out and do stuff, right?
That's good. That's a pact that we do sometimes when we go out for dinner. We don't touch our phones. That's what my family and I do at the dinner table, stuff like that. I think it's important to have interaction, especially now where human interaction is extremely low with restrictions and quarantine and everything. Yeah.
Something else I wanted to talk to you about today was soccer. You're a soccer fan. You played soccer, right?
Yes. I've been playing soccer since I was 4.
Well, there you go. Well, that's a long time. You've been. It's a wonder you're not a professional soccer player now.
Oh, well, I hoped to be when I was little. That's all. I just wanted to be a player for Chelsea in England and play for the Matildas here in Australia. But some dreams die, and that was one that died.
Well, there's an Australian lady soccer player whose dream to come and play for Chelsea in the UK did come true because she's over there right now, isn't she?
Yep.
Sam Kerr, and she's having a bit of a hard time of it too, I read lately, because she's had a couple of poor performances, but. Has she been a bit of an inspiration, Sam Kerr? Is she someone you've always looked up to?
Yeah, I think she's absolutely incredible. I think that so many players of the Matildas girls and soccer players all around the world, I mean, you look at Alex Morgan in the US and Sam Kerr here in Australia, and I think that they are really, and Serena Williams as well, tennis player. Women in sport is really important, especially for us younger girls. I mean, that is a major source of inspiration for me because I love sport. I think that they always invite young girls to jump on board and follow their dreams, and I think that's really, really important in sport.
Brilliant. Well, I'll let you know on the news. You might know it, but Serena just won her second round match in the US Open a few hours ago, so she's through the third round, and she's chasing an Australian record, isn't she? Margaret Court's all-time Grand Slam record. And she's been a bit out of luck lately as Serena because she's fallen over at the last hurdle a couple of times, so maybe this will be her time in COVID-19 in New York City. So what other sports are you into?
I have played touch football for a long time at the start of high school. I only just quit a couple of years ago. I just wanted to focus on school and the senior years of school. I love touch football. I follow basketball as well. Tennis. My grandfather loves tennis, so every time we're there, it's always on the TV, so we watch that as well. Cricket, my dad's side of the family are major cricket supporters, so I love cricket as well. I love all sport, really. It's all interested. I think it invites people to find something in common to talk about.
So has uni life encroached in your pastimes and hobbies that you like to do? Like, are you that flat out at uni, or is it a bit of a breeze for you at uni? You're able to get through everything pretty easily?
Yeah, I think at the moment it's quite full on, especially because it's mid-semester, so there's assessments and there's exams and stuff like that. But I always make a pact to myself to try and balance, because I'm such a nerd and I can't stop studying. Then I always forget to go outside for the day. I mean, there's been like 2 days in a row where I haven't been outside. I was just just looking at my textbooks and reading. So, I think it does play a part in stopping me from doing what I love outside of the house, really. Yeah, but I try and balance myself. I think balance is really, really hard. So it's the hardest thing to do.
Yeah, I tell you what, when you get older, it doesn't change. It's always hard. So,
Yep.
Whoever cracks the balance thing is a lucky person, that's for sure.
I think so too. I'd love to talk to them.
Are you somebody that has to have music playing when you're studying, or do you have to have a quiet room?
Quiet. Yeah, I can't listen to music while I'm studying. Sometimes I'll listen to like rain.
Yeah.
Rain relaxes me and calms me, so I'll put my headphones in and play like rain videos and listen to those. But otherwise, yeah, I can't have music. Can you have music?
No, I can't. I've got to be completely zoned into what
Same.
I'm doing. Otherwise, I just can't do it.
Me too. I'll just end up singing. No one wants to hear me sing, so.
So I want to do a bit of crystal ball gazing before I let you go today.
Sure.
And what are you now? You're 19. So let's say 11 years from now, 30. You're 30 years old. Okay, you're out there in the world. What are you doing, and where are you?
Where am I? Honestly, I don't really want to put a label on where I am, because I think that everyone goes places in time. I think that everyone is where they are because I don't even know how to explain this now. We're gonna have to redo this a little bit. But what was I trying to say?
Where are you going to be?
How do I say this? I want to be a lawyer. That's what I want to be doing in terms of my career. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be fighting for the rights of many people who are oppressed and willfully ignored in society and have been for a long time. In terms of places or countries, I mean, I hope to have travelled by then and do things even like we were talking about before with NGOs and charities and everything like that. I really hope to be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I mean, I love Australia. I want to grow old here. I want to be here for the rest of my life. But yeah, apart from that, I just want to be a lawyer. That's where I'm hoping to go.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna put a date in the calendar, and hopefully I'm still going to be around doing podcast in the next 11 years. I'm going to have you back, and we'll talk about it. But we'll probably get you back before that, because I don't want to wait too long.
Yes, definitely.
So with your ambitions in that, in terms of lawyer, and you're looking at what's going on around the world at the moment, in particular with the economy and all the downturn that's going on, how does your generation see the opportunities for the future now? How do you reconcile what's going on from an economic point of view in terms of jobs and opportunities for young people? Where's your mind around all that sort of stuff at the moment?
Well, I think that, with what's happening with the economy because of COVID, I mean, we don't have. We're living in a very fortunate country. I mean, my friends and I have opportunities at every corner. If we work to get there, I think we can get there. And I mean, if we strive, if we put the work into where we want to go, we can get there. I think that economy, it doesn't have an effect on our opportunities at the moment, but I mean, it can for a lot of other people, and we need to all be there for each other and help each other through this time, because there are others out there in the world, and even people that I know that are less fortunate and are suffering right now. We just entered a recession. It was declared a couple of days ago. So I think that now is the time that we need to spread opportunities for each other and be there for each other and support each other and be a network of just complete and utter support for each other at the moment.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's a lovely way to end the show today. Now, I know that all your friends, in addition to your family, are going to watch this performance of yours today on your first podcast show. I want to say to you, you've done a fantastic job, and thank you very much for joining me. What message do you want to send those friends and family members of yours? Let's give a shout out to them and give them a special message from yourself to them today.
Sure. I just want to say I love you guys, and thank you for always supporting me. A lot of my friends didn't even know that I was coming on this today. So this is going to be a major, major surprise. They're going to be really, really excited for me. For all of my family, my friends, I love you. Thank you for encouraging me to be who I want to be. And I hope you enjoyed this podcast and didn't cringe. Sometimes I get a bit nervous when I'm talking, so sentences just honestly just fall out like word vomit. So I hope it was okay for you to listen to, everyone.
You've done a brilliant job, and I hope they don't think the host of the show was too dorky today, so I hope I get okay marks as
great.
well.
He's awesome. Thank you so much, Mark.
Piper, thanks
for... Such an honour to be on.
You're
Thank
welcome.
You for what you're doing. I think you're doing an amazing thing. It's amazing. It's an amazing little business for you, so congratulations. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, and I'm going to have you back one day because I'd love to carry on the conversation. I feel as though we could have gone on for a couple of more hours, and as life goes on for you, I want to catch up and find out how your perspective on all these things we've talked about might change, evolve, develop, whatever, in the future.
I hope so. By the time we talk next, there's growth and change and development, and I want to see if you're still on your boat or not.
I'm not going anywhere soon, I can tell you that.
Good. Well, I hope you have the same background and the same quote in the background.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Piper.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark.